Look at my messy room. It's been a while since I've cleaned it. But sometimes you just don't feel like doing it. You have to do it, you see it. You just can't make yourself do it. You just don't see the point just yet. So it's 2 in the morning. It's actually 2:26 a.m. And you ever just wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, why am I up right now? Well, I figured I might as well just start talking to this camera. You ever have these thoughts in your head and they seem so profound, and then you forget what you were thinking? It's probably because your memory's not good. Mhm. So I'm new to being a part of YouTube. I'm usually just a viewer. But I'd figure really what I'm interested in is, I guess, chatting with people about certain topics, touchy topics online. I mean, these days you're either, well, I can't say that, but what I was going to say is you're either on this side or that side. But there's a lot of people with, opinions that would say like are mixed. What I'm really talking about is just, for instance, one example is this whole transgender thing. Okay, cultures always have, you know, well, especially Western culture, there's always these trends, There's trends, Um, there's different types of music for different era. The 70s had disco and, there was rock and stuff, but 60s, were hippies, music, and, there's like a lot of stuff, but this is just like a general 50s, each, what is that, a decade? I'm not, I'm not perfect with everything I'm saying, but really what I'm saying is 2020, 2023, 220s, 210s, 2000s, they each have their own color for that time of year, their own sound, When I think of 70s, I think of yellow and brown for some reason. When I think of 60s, I think of red. When I think of 50s, I think of blue. When I think of 2000s, I think of like pink. When I think of 2020, I think of like a teal, like a light blue. Anyways, the point is that there's also ideas within those timelines, within each timeline's music and perceived, style for which that time will go down in history for, and you can't see, if you're on a cruise ship on a boat, you can't see the boat from afar and see how big it is if you're on the boat. If you're on the boat, it's a different experience from viewing the boat from the beach. You see the entire boat, but when you're on it, you're part of it. You're feeling the flow. You're part of the boat moving. You might not be able to see the picture, the whole boat though, because you're on it. And that's how it is with existing in a time frame. You're on the boat. You can't see the whole picture because you're on it. You can look down and you see the floor. You look to the side, you see the ocean, but you can't see the whole boat from like the beach perspective. And that's like after the time has passed. You can see things not as personal because you're not there, but you can see them more clearly in the big picture from a distance. And you might not get the full story because you're not on the boat, but you can still see things that people who are on the boat can't see. And the boat is a metaphor for the timeline, if you didn't get that already. I'm really good at metaphors and analogies. I'm like, you'll learn if I keep posting videos. I'm like fast at that. Anyways, time is like the boat, and people observing the past or the present are like people on a boat or watching from the beach. And the point of all this is it's easy to look at a boat from afar and say, uh, you know, watch out for that over there. You know, you might hit that. But when you're on the boat, you might you might just hit that. Even if there's people on the boat saying, "No, there's something there. Turn, don't keep driving." Kind of like this transgender thing. It's like that's the iceberg. There's a lot of people saying, "No, don't go there. It's not good. Turn the boat." But then there's the people steering the boat right now, the captain, whoever got elected as captain. They're just they want to crash this boat. You know what I'm saying? They want to run it right into this iceberg, which is like the transgender thing, which is making not the fact that somebody wants to be transgender, because as an adult, you know what I mean? Whatever sexual preference you want, as long as it's not illegal or hurting someone unless they want to be hurt legally, like, you know, sadomasochist or something. But the point is that once you're um you know, once you crash this boat called society into an iceberg called normalizing young kids to have sex changes because the parents pushing, let's be real, it's just an idea, it's just a trend. That's the whole beginning of this conversation is about trends. And that's my point, is that there's these parents who are going to basically mutilate, and it's not basically, it is mutilating. They're completely forming operations on a underdeveloped brain, imposing its own uh, you know, perspectives onto it. I mean, this is the thing though. This is what makes it very dangerous, is because there's countries or there's tribes in Africa, in other places, let's just say, that um, you know, have old rituals where they put the thing in their lip, they put the, you know, they raise their neck with rings. And if people did that here to their kid, you would say that's child abuse, right? But you say, no, that's their culture there. Okay. So we leave it alone, and they do that. And it's just a part of their culture, and it's a sign of like beauty or whatever, like honor, whatever they, you know, believe it. It's like that here with the parents who want to raise their kids in this certain culture, because brand new culture. It's an experimental culture, to be honest. This whole transgender woke. Let's just stop using those words. Let's just call it what it is. Um, you know, trying to genetically modify children because the parents want to be a part of a trend of transgender. You know, changing a sex of a person into the opposite sex that they were born. The thing is that they're saying it's the kids that want it. Um, kids will want whatever reality you think you give them to that they think is that all there is to exist is to want, like. So, if you have a kid born in a red room and he never leaves that room, he's going to think all the walls everywhere are red, you know. So if you have a kid raised with transgender promoting parents, or two gay couples, or just some weird thing that's not a male and female parenting situation, either two males, two females, or one's acting like a girl, one's a guy, but they're both opposite of what they're acting like. Just some crazy shit like that. From my perspective of someone that's just grown up through, like, California in the 90s. You if you couldn't call child abuse on a tribe in Africa that's like putting things in their lip and doing this, but you say no, that's their culture, then you have a brand new culture that's really just new. Okay, it's only what, not even, this is a 10-year-old thing at most, like the idea of it. And okay, so you would say, okay, well, it's these parents' right to treat their child how they want to based on their culture. Mm, but then you're like, okay, but you live in a society with certain laws. Okay. Okay. So all you have to do is legalize those laws, and then what? Society. I mean, that laws are what keeps society in check, right? So if all of a sudden laws change, then society, well, not, the fabric of it is going to shift. If all of a sudden people legalized murdering every Tuesday, so every Tuesday you could murder, and it was legal that day, well, that would obviously drastically change the way of life in society in the Western culture. My point is that by legalizing, making it okay to change the gender of a child for whatever reason, because it's not the child's reason, it's the adult's reasoning. The child's growing up within the reality that the adult is providing. Okay, so let's not mix that up here. These children are only thinking about changing their sex because they're hearing it. You don't speak Spanish by growing up in, you know, somewhere that's not a Spanish speaking place. You don't grow up speaking English unless you grow up with people talking, speaking in English. You don't grow up wanting to change your sex unless you grow up with people talking about changing your sex. So the idea that these kids are choosing to, or the parents are saying they recognize that the kids are showing signs of transgender, it's like, um, man, it's like, I used to want to be a psychologist because it's interesting, the rationale for people's thinking, and nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect, but all we have, are our instincts, our logic, and our reasoning. And if that's all you have, and you're forfeiting any of those, you know, taking away what's making us special, as our species. That's how I look at reality. That's how I view reality, is that we're a species on a planet. I look at it very, I guess, just you know, realist, like real, like the basics for what it is, like scientifically, just um, building logic, not on assumptions, but based off, actual physics and logic and reasoning. So yeah, I mean, but anyways, our species, you know, this society, um, history shows that in like the Roman times or other societies or civilizations that have collapsed, there was signs of, or there's blatant evidence of sexual, like, identity, like confusion. Basically, when a society starts getting confused about its roles as genders, and like it gets really stupid and confusing like it is now, is as a sign, as an indicator of a society about to collapse. Because when you change the fabric of society, that of something like a law or something so basic, like not fucking with, a child's hormones or sex, so that they, are getting sex changes before they even go through puberty. um that's a big deal. That's something that's going to drastically affect society. Really, what I think it is just a way for globalization to occur quicker by, let's just say, America is a person, and all this propaganda and confusion for existence in in, in our species, trying to figure out what sex they are. It's like sugar. There was this experiment done to these Indians, I believe, a long time ago, and basically it was a white man, like a white Western culture, gave processed white bread to a tribe of Indians for like a month or two, and just gave them a bunch of bread and which was just sugar, really. And it was like 2 months later, just introducing this amount of sugar into their diet, the Indians started like having rotting teeth, and like their teeth were falling out because of all the sugar. It was just decaying, and it was just such a shock to the system. And plus, if you don't, if you eat sugar a lot, or you have like some energy drinks, you know, I don't know, my teeth are real sensitive, but there's like 2 ounces, over 2 ounces, like 60 grams of sugar in like one rock star. So my teeth will feel a little like weak after, or bit brittle. So if you feed a tribe who's been eating healthy their whole life, and then you feed them this sugar for basically 2 months, like from bread, their teeth will start rotting out. Well, that's my other analogy or metaphor for America. America are the Indians who are living on a strict diet of society and morals, and you know general, like, not something new that's confusing them about something so basic as their own gender. Everyone can. The thing is, you can't start changing, giving actual drugs to like children. That's changing their biological nat- natural function. That's just not right. You're experimenting with a new type of culture, an unsuspecting generation of humans. It's an experiment. You're legally making it, being able to experiment an idea of a trend that's introducing drug hormones, changing, having biological effects on young children, human. This is an experiment that's being propagandized to be socially acceptable in the minds of people. But when you break it down for all that it is, all you're doing is you're experimenting on human lives because of a trend, and it's going to have long-term effects. There's no long-term studies, and there's the only long-term studies that are coming about from people who have done this before are the suicide rates are off the fucking charts. Why is that? It's because when you're young, you're so confused, you're trying to understand reality, and then you got all these adults influencing you with what reality is, and you're just human. You're just absorbing information in your brain, trying to figure out reality. You go through a bunch of hormone changes too, messing up with your natural, you know, growth, and you're trying to figure out existence, and then for these poor kids, I got people making them like think that they should dress in drag clothes and dance for people. Like, they're gonna grow up, and when they get old enough to realize what happened, if they're even not pushed back so far in their psyche because of all the trauma, that they're able to grasp and see their boat from the shore, from the beach, and see the big picture of what their childhood really was like. That's going to be so hard to deal with. Um, they're going to have no coping mechanisms. They're going to have no support because all their support was just pushing this trend on them, experimenting with their life, their existence. They're going to be angry. They're going to be sad and depressed. And they're going to wonder why no one protected them as a kid, you know? And that's so sad. That's really where it comes down to is if that was you as a kid, and then you grow up later and you realize, you know, that you were given drugs, you were influenced to take the drugs. They gave you the option of choosing when you were a kid, and there's all these adults around you. Imagine how that kid's gonna feel like as an adult. Um, and I would love for someone to come chat with me on here that thinks I'm like wrong, because I'm not wrong, because I'm looking at it from a far perspective of just observing it, like as if I was an alien just observing this planet. What is going on right now? Well, I would say to my alien overlords, well, the trends and, you know, of the society during periods of time, this certain trend is affecting, you know, the output of humans, and they're being tampered with, you know, biologically. It's probably gonna end. Like, where would this end? Like, let's just envision it. Let's just say we totally accept all this shit about changing kids' sex if the parents want to or think they heard them say they did, or, you know, it's like some of these stories are so ridiculous. Like a kid puts on like a girl hat or shoes, and they're like a little kid, and it's like, oh, he's showing signs that he wants to be a girl. It's like, it's it's as bad as religion. It really is. It's like having a kid grow up in a really religious household, and then the kid draws like a upside down cross with a crayon, and the parents like start you know, think he's a possessed or something, you know, with a demon. Like that's how ridiculous these people seem to me. It's just as bad. It's actually it's worse, to be honest. But anyways, um, yeah, the whole point is that this is a trend. It's also an experiment, and it's also sad because you're experimenting on kids right out in the open. The government is essentially getting society to do experiments for them by convincing society or certain people that you know, convincing them whatever they want, to be honest. Oh, but what I was gonna say was, why would someone do this? Well, if you're a global leader and you want to control the world, uh, America is like a shield that you use, right, to get other shit done around the world. But once you get that done, and that shield becomes a barrier to continue your plan. Well, now that shield that you needed, you need that shield to break down. And like the Indians with the white bread, as long as you just feed the shield or America or society the bread or the sugar or the propaganda that is whatever it wants to be, but as long as it breaks down the teeth or the shield of America, um, you will have completed your objective of continuing your plan of globalizing. So to me, this whole thing with the transgender thing is just a way to break down America so that it can be pushed over because it's no longer necessary to be the shield anymore. To be honest, right now it's April 26, 2023 at 2:52 a.m. Um, and I'm just gonna say I call it um, China and Russia working together and then becoming, you know, uh, the more dominant nation on the planet. Because for the last 100 to 200 years, right, America has been the leading nation on the planet. Well, um, because of all the sugar breaking us down, making America weak. And I won't get too specific about. Well, obviously, it's just all the change, all the policy changes, all the things that are breaking down. It's just think of it all as just sugar. They're just feeding America stuff with no nutrients that tastes sweet, tastes good, but then all of a sudden you start feeling not good, and you start realizing, you know what, you need some actual food in your diet because just a bunch of bullshit and old senile guy trying to pretend to have his own brain with all the other, you know, sugar pushers you want to call it in the government. To be honest, let's just be honest. It's at the point now where can you really trust your vote counts when you're voting for a president? Is it just for show now at this point? I mean, at least in Russia and China, they got the balls to say, you know, there's one dictator. This is a communist. Not that that's a good thing. I'm just saying America feels like it's already becoming communist, uh, and and a, and a and like a one leader government with, but just trying to pretend that it's not by holding elections and votes. But I mean, honestly, did Biden really win? I don't really even think that. To be like he, first of all, they didn't even check my ID when I voted. So I was like, you're not even gonna check my ID? Right there, you already lose credibility. Like you could just have a bunch of illegal aliens coming voting, um, and they don't even check your ID. Because I remember when I voted for Obama when I was like, younger. Um, I believe they checked my ID, and they made sure they checked your ID. But when the election came for, I didn't even vote for Trump when he got elected. I just didn't even vote. But when the next election came up with Biden and Trump, I voted Trump, but they didn't even check my ID. So I think America's already communist party. We're just pretending we're not. So what's one communist party over the other? I mean, all I'm saying is let's just look at it for what it is. I love the idea of America and what it was, but let's just be real. I mean, since we got off the gold standard and the banks became the owners, uh, it was just a matter of time before America wasn't what it was made for. I mean, it was a good 200-year span. Um, let's just be real. China's the oldest civilization or culture, right? I mean, is Russia older? I don't know. I'm not. I'm not going to pretend like I know. I'm just believe that China is one of the oldest cultures, in existence. America's not that old. It's only 200 years old. China's like thousands of years old. So, I mean, if the whole entire planet is just one big game of Monopoly, then my room's a mess. Yeah, I'm just. Anyways, if it's one big game of Monopoly, uh, eventually there'll be a winner, right? I mean, but anyways, because like in science fiction movies, there's always one world order. So is that the inevitable? Uh, I think perhaps there could be a democratic society that's like American, at least values and ideas of being fair and people voting. But when it comes down to it, who, who's to say like what the best thing would be for a species like us? To be honest, I feel like if logical, smart, intelligent people were able to just make society the way that it would best be, that would really not be that hard. It'd be pretty easy. But the thing is control. Whoever has it doesn't want to let it go and doesn't want to certainly give it to someone else. But the thing is that society is an experiment. We're animals. China's an older experiment, so it has more data on societal data, long term data on society and implications of choices. China knows that if they were to start doing transgender things and everything, uh, they would appear weak. But for some reason, America just likes to appear trendy, I guess. It's just trendy, I feel like. Anyways, I'm a big fan of Elon Musk. I feel like there was no hope for the future of humanity. And that might sound, I don't know, cliche, I guess. But to be honest, I don't know. To be honest, if you never look at if you never think about the future, like not your future, but the future of the planet, the future of your species, of your great, 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 great grandchildren, then you probably never think this, anyways. But if you ever think about the future and how it could unfold, um, you could see where it's going. It's like a ball you can roll down a hill, and if you're on this side of the hill, the ball is going to roll down that side of the hill. If you're on this side, you let the ball go. The ball, unless there's grooves down the path, then you know that the ball could get caught in those grooves and start going down that. Well, society has grooves and the future is like a hill, and the evolution of this society is like the ball. So as we roll down the hill, we could get caught on certain paths. One path would be like in sci-fi movies, just one world order. And is that a good thing? It could be, or it could be a bad thing. It could be dark and controlling and just oppressive and really bleak, and this is like basically just dystopia, future we've seen in all the movies. Or it could be like cyberpunk, you know, technology merged with humans, big corporations running the planet. I mean, completely only two classes: rich, poor, no middle class. Um, you know, or it could be uncool, like really technology based society, science based society. That's what I would hope. With just like the best intellectual reasoning and logical approach to everything that that intellect could muster. No politics, no control over votes, just pure raw logic and like reasoning. Oh, imagine, imagine a society that was just based off pure logic and reasoning and empathy and just intelligence, not greed, not control. There's so many intelligent people, so many brilliant things that have been suppressed, are being suppressed. Minds, brilliant minds, natural minds that have been suppressed from conditioning, from school. Brilliant minds that have been ruined from birth because of horrible, trendy parents that want to subjugate their children to these trendy ideologies, experiments of like confusing a person of its gender, uh, being introduced drugs, hormones that biologically affect the hormone, implications of like of your body, like just growing and your mind. Uh, it's like we're poisoning ourselves. It's just like the sugar analogy. It's like people are just eating up all these sweet things that are making their egos feel all good because they've never been a part of something, so they're grasping onto something they can feel a part of. And what it's doing is leeching off of all these pathetic people that don't use any of their brain, and they're so emotionally based in their reality that all you have to do is control their emotions, and then you control their reality. And it's I'm not the smartest person in the world, but I'm definitely not the dumb kid in class. And if I am the dumb kid in class, it's because I'm smart and everyone else is dumb, and they just think I'm dumb because I'm not like them. But man, growing up in a future, let's say I'm 70 years old. What year will that be? I'm 30, about 30. Let's see. It's 40 years. So 40 years from now, it'll be 2063, right? How do you think the world is going to be like in 2063 if we keep going down these fucking trends? You think it's gonna be a free world where people can express and be who they want to be and not be pushed down by the, you know, obligations of sexual standards of society? What the fuck does that even look like? All that's gonna look like is a bunch of fucking stupid people who are all fucked up in the head because they were ruined since birth because of these crazy people giving them drugs, like surgeries at 13 years old to cut the female parts off or dick or male parts off, you know. Oh my god. You're gonna have a society of freaks is what you're gonna have. But not everyone's like this. Let's not forget this percentage is fairly small compared to the rest of society. The crazy thing is this amount of propaganda that can go into something and the results you can get. Propaganda is like a pill, you know? And like if you have a client with or a patient with good immunity, then you need more pills to have a similar result as opposed to someone with a low immunity to where you could give them a half a pill and have the same result. So the goal for people who are trying to control everything would be to, lower the immunity of society's logic and reasoning. And really, that's what it is. Is if you lower the immunity of society, you can give it a pill, and it'll have a much greater effect than if the society was not immune to bullshit. So you got to dumb down everybody, then use propaganda. Then we can completely destroy the fabric of society and the Western culture because we don't need it anymore because it was just a shield. And now that we've convinced, all of basically all the NATO nations to accept the propaganda of Western style, culture, which is fairly new and an experiment now and introducing new experiments. Um, Basically, let's just get Russia and China to work together, cancel out the shield of America because we don't need that now. Shift the balance of powers in the world. Um, and then, as far as technology, like artificial intelligence and robotics, well, I'm sure by the time we kill off half the planet, we'll be able to replace all of those people with robots. And then at that time, the community will be even weaker, use more propaganda or less propaganda to get more control until you got society whipped into shape. Um, and to be honest, this whole COVID thing, could also be a way of just paying back China. Because if I'm not mistaken, isn't America in debt to China for like billions of dollars, if not more, like trillions? I don't know. So if we're in debt to them and say, you know what, let's just sell America to China. I bet China would want to know how obedient we are as a society. It's a good test to see how obedient we are. Let's start COVID and see how many people wear their masks and get the shot. And based off that data and result, we could then analyze to see the level of obedience of America. Basically, like when you buy a car and you inspect it, you check its tires and you look under the hood and you check the oil. You're like, okay, this looks good enough for me to drive. Um, I'll hop in. And then you say, cool. So everyone puts their masks on. China is like, okay, they're obedient enough for my standards. Uh, Instead of telling Americans that we're just going to sell them out to China. Let's just do this. Let's just do that. Into where we make Americans believe it's their fault. Because it will be. Because, the established authoritative structures that are already promoting the propaganda, like schools, colleges, schools, basically. Schools are not education, they're indoctrination, more so now than ever. And yeah, I mean, not even hiding it anymore, just literally indoctrinating people. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, so those are my middle of the night thoughts. Nothing too uncommon, but it would be nice to have a what's it called, conversation with other people. So let's see, perhaps I can have a interview with somebody so that I can bounce off my consciousness with theirs, and I won't just sit here talking to myself to the camera. Anyways, it's pretty much my little thoughts in a nutshell for tonight. Let's hope, just so this video can be dated, let's hope that new Starship from SpaceX, the next launch, I know it went up, so that was successful, and then it exploded. So I know they got a lot of data. So let's see when Starship goes to space, or its first actual orbit launch. It'll be exciting. ChatGPT, also one of Musk's, things he was a part of, collecting a bunch of data from all the users soon. So that will all be analyzed. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting 2024 for sure. Anyways, I think I'll get back to sleep and end this stream.